Hi. Hi, I'm Amanda Krukliak, and I'm the arts curator at the Institute for the Humanities Gallery. And this is a little checkup on an artist that was part of our series House Calls, which ran over the summer and through the pandemic initially and all that was happening. And it was just a way to check in with artists and see how they were doing. So Sarah Rose Sharp is one of our guests. And over the summer, with the support of the Mellon, Sarah was actually able to produce work for an exhibition, Results or Roses, at the Institute for the Humanities Gallery. Because of the limitations of COVID-19, we aren't able to open that exhibition to the public, but it does exist in the real world and also will be on our website as a gallery where you can look at all the images and find out more about it. So as part of this and a continuation of House Calls, we wanted to really do a checkup. And here we are. Sarah Rose Sharp, how are you?
Okay, I'm doing well. It sort of feels like all things considered, you have to put that coat on every feeling that you have, but I'm doing pretty well overall. How are you?
I'm okay. It's funny being in this little world that we're in again. One could almost imagine I never left this square and you never left the square. And as if no time had passed. It's really a strange feeling.
Yeah, I've been pretty in my fishbowl, but actually I thrive here a lot, so it's not the worst fate for me.
So I wonder if you can talk a little bit more about how you have worked through this time of the pandemic and this project specifically, and how it served you in regards to just a process of finding your way through this time.
I mean, I've been thinking about how crisis or intensity tends to crystallize for me what's important. And I think something that has become really clear to me in the isolation of COVID has been what connections are crucial to me and what are actually like sort of draining. And having this sort of no fault excuse to not be socially engaged in situations that sometimes are a little like overwhelming for me, and instead to channel that energy into a really kind of isolated making process has been a major shift for me. I mean, I think I've made some of the best art of my life this summer, and that's certainly in part due to the support from you. And also, I think from having really the time and the space away from things that normally take me away from my practice.
As everything else falls away, there are these very specific ways that we're able to find structure or move forward. And the task at hand, the work, the doing, seemed life saving, really, through this time. And your work in particular, I feel as if I've been starving for something tactile, something I can touch, even though it may not always be in person, just the suggestion of it, that just felt critical. The materiality of your work. So
Yeah.
can you talk about that? Like, do you feel that the whole kind of work that you do, the way that it's about this sewing, or it has this reference to one's domestic space or that activity, is that part of what was reassuring to you in this moment?
I think part of what attracts me to fiber art at its root is that everybody has a relationship with those materials. You wear clothes, you probably sleep in contact with fabric, like you have tactile memories of touching things like sequins or beading. I think because that there is a sort of sense memory associated with a lot of fabrics, even if you can't actually directly touch the work, when I work with burlap or I work with velvet or I put a bunch of beading on things, it does like evoke a kind of visceral connection with a viewer, and obviously with me. And when I'm working with them, I am touching them. And I do, I always think it's sort of a struggle. And because understandably, the first rule of art museum is don't touch the art. But like as an artist, like all I do is touch the art, you know? And then there is for me this real sort of conversation through history with other fiber artists. And that like is the sort of found and salvaged pieces that I'm pulling together in my works. One of the central new pieces with that sort of Statue of Liberty image in the middle, the background of it, the sort of brown frame fabric, is a tablecloth that was embroidered by my great grandmother, Rose, who my middle name is for. And the piece is called Immigrant Song. And like they were immigrants. And there's something to me about getting to collaborate with one of my ancestors who I never met in person that fiber art makes possible. And when I pick up these quilt scraps, I'm like very aware of the fact that somebody, probably a woman, worked on this. And now I'm working with her. All of that to me is like lovely collaboration, and like those layerings, and like that's sort of the Detroit patchwork pieces I've done that are like looking at buildings that have been patchworked and then trying to replicate them with patchwork, literal patchwork is, you know, it's just different ways of thinking about all those things, I think.
So with that said, and thinking about place and personhood and things being patched together, how have you landed, or where have you landed in all of this, in this work that you've done, in this show that isn't quite like a show one might have in some different time? Where have you landed now moving forward?
I mean, this is interesting. I am normally when I finish a big body of work for exhibition, I have that kind of hangover moment where I don't want to touch anything or even look at it or deal with it. And that didn't happen this time. Like I'm right back into it, and I have new ideas, and like I'm like really working on a whole bunch of stuff, and I'm excited, and I'm like working daily, and it feels great. And I think it's also the sort of end of major garden season. So I'm turning over my garden for the fall and into the winter. And while I was working out there, I thought about the idea of excavation, and that to me feels like this really fundamental theme, or like a pillar of humanity, is the process of excavation. And that like that works on a societal level in terms of like literally digging up our history and examining it and coming to a new understanding. But also on like a personal level, I've been going through like a series of diaries that I've kept since I was like 15. And it's like I'm ready to face these parts of myself that I've sort of buried and like left behind. And then I think artistically, that's that same thing of me like trying to find scraps and like reintegrate them. And what's been sort of beautiful for me with the diaries that I've been working on, which have then manifested, I'm starting new work that kind of make these diary pages into fiber art pieces, is realizing that some of the mistakes that I was compelled to distance myself from or sort of disavow because they're embarrassing, or they're, you know, I was ashamed of making weird choices or like whatever I've done in my past. By not owning them, I missed the learning. I missed the lesson, because really mistakes are just how we learn things. And it's been tremendously empowering to go back through them, to see these mistakes in a new light and with more compassion and understanding, and and the lessons are still there. Like I get to learn them. Like they are, like, by excavating these mistakes, I also excavate the takeaway, the growth.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's so much taking us back to your gardening that we talked about during house calls,
Yeah.
and this sort of metaphor for tilling the soil and tending to an excavation. It is so great to talk to you. I'm so excited that we have results or roses in the space, and it'll be online soon. And yeah,
I
thanks
really
so much.
it's been a really big year for me in terms of being able to like actualize, and I couldn't have done it without you.
Well, we love you. So thank you so much for being part of our story too.
Thanks.
Bye, Rosie.